Alright, ladies and gentlemen, Baron here, and today, as you can see, we are taking out the king of derp, the KV-2, with a 152mm howitzer gun. Now, what is this whole king of derp? What's this whole derp? Well, what I believe it to be is, this tank, I mean, you look at it, it kind of looks special, right? He looks... You know, like maybe as a child, as a young Clement Voroshilov tank, he was on the short bus, he was a special child. But then he grew up, and while he was a little disproportioned, he proved himself to be very powerful. And it's derpy because if you hit with the high explosive rounds, which is what I am using, as opposed to the concrete penetrating rounds, you know, in most cases you're going to get an immediate kill. So what we saw right there was I hit a tiger and I got a hit. Right, and if you look at that reload time, it's really long. I mean, just count it out. And by the way, since we saw that plane, it brings up a good topic. I have heard reports of people taking down planes in their KV-2s, and it looks like my friend there was almost pivoting his gun around. So we have a little dogfight around, but what I'm going to be talking about today is the KV-2, big guns, and Soviet tank destroyers. You know, and assault guns, basically like the KV-2. It's not necessarily a purebred tank destroyer, right? And there's that KV-2 trying to run away. Got a hit. I started off a little slow. He caught on fire, and then he blew up. So while I thought I missed him at first, it did enough. Now, basically, how it works is these 152mm high explosive shells do not have a lot of penetration power. You know, and the basic fundamental of tank combat is, oh, well, I need to penetrate the enemy tank so that some of the round will bounce around and kill crew, or it will pierce an ammo rack, an engine, critical components, and either damage or take out the tank from the fight. And look at that IS tank, look at the tank chassis, because we're going to get back to that when we talk about some of the other ones. But basically with the high explosive round, all you need to do is hit in most cases, and you will be able to knock out an enemy tank because of the concussive force from that high explosive round. Will not necessarily penetrate, let's say, the turret or the chassis, but it will cause enough force of impact through the explosion, which may have happened on that T-34-85 right there, although his armor probably would have been blown in, that pieces of the armor would blow inside, and those pieces of the armor, the splintering effect from the hull armor of the tank, you're basically using the armor of the tank against the crew inside it. It's kind of a unique situation for large caliber howitzer rounds like we're showing off right here. It's pretty cool. So like the concussive force can knock the crew out, daze them, confuse them, whatever. So basically they're like, you know what, screw this. If I'm going to get hit with another one of those, my head's going to explode. I'm hopping out of this tank. Or where you just literally smash the enemy tank without penetrating the armor, but almost causing it to fold in a bit, and as it folds, splinters of metal armor are flying through you if you're one of the crew members inside. Not a pleasant thought or sight or experience, I can assure you of that. So here we're basically using the KV-2, not necessarily, I wouldn't say it's in its intended role. I'm kind of playing as a sniper of sorts. And if that's not derpy, sniping with a 152mm howitzer, I don't really know what is. So let's talk about a little bit about this tank. Well, it uses the M10 152mm howitzer, and if you're not on the metric system, it's 6 inches. Pretty impressive sized gun. Now, what's interesting about the KV-2 was that the M10 howitzer, basically, they stopped producing it kind of early on in the war, about 1941. And if you're familiar with World War II and just kind of the history and what happened to the Russians, goodbye, Flak Panzer. Flat Panzer, not Flak Panzer. I know if you say it kind of with a little accent, it kind of sounds like it. There's a lot of funny nicknames. I want to know some of the other nicknames of the KV-2. Because that Jagdpanzer IV, I heard a lot of people call it Flat Panzer. And when you hear it really quickly, I'm like, that is not a Flak Panzer, guys. But I digress, as I usually do. So while this howitzer kind of stopped production the Soviets didn't stop howitzer production on other guns, and that actually led to other basically assault and tank destroyer type designs. Now these kind of served in the role of tank destroyers because they found out rather quickly through probably necessity as opposed to planning, as I missed that tiger right there, that they could be rather effective against tanks. Probably once they saw KV-2, derp, you know, Panzer III, Panzer IV, something like that, and watch it blow up, you know, they realized what they could use these for. But some of the other ones, if you're wondering, you know, is this going to be the top gun in the game? Is this going to be the biggest one? Well, I know for the Soviets, they actually have two other basically tank destroyer systems that will use 152mm howitzers, although they're going to use the ML-20S as opposed to the M10. And those are the SU-152 and the ISU-152. Now the SU-152s are based off of a KV-1S chassis, and they don't have a turret like this one. While you have the, and there's actually, the turret brings up an interesting topic in that a lot of people are saying the traverse rate of this hand crank turret is a little too quickly, and I would kind of agree with them, but these things can be ironed out as this is just beta for the tanks right now. And look at that guy getting vaporized, you know. I'm forgetting that Greek mythological creature with the snakes on her head that could turn you to stone, because it looks like those two tanks, that's what happened to them right there. Forgot that name as I get hit, but I'm on a KV-1 chassis, so I've got pretty good armor, so I'm able to take shots from this Panzer IV right here and then dish out the pain. But the SU-152 has 75mm of frontal armor. It doesn't have a turret, so it's a casemate style tank destroyer, in that it's not open, but it doesn't have a turret. And it uses the ML-20S 152mm howitzer, as I said, and based off the KV-1S, or basically the KV-1 modernized chassis. And then you have the ISU-152. And if you like the IS-1 tank right now, imagine that as a tank destroyer with a 152mm howitzer on it, with 90mm of frontal armor, 75mm on the side, and then, oh, you know, 120mm of armor in your mantlet. So you can just basically take shots to the nose. You have an iron nose when you get into these slugging and boxing matches. So there's that. The ISU are basically based off the Joseph Stalin or IS chassis. And then the SUs, the SU-152 and SU-122, which we may have time to talk about, are based off of different chassis. The SU-152 off KV-1S and the SU-122 based off the T-34 chassis. Now, what's interesting about the SU-122, because it's basically like baby derp, you're going to have 122mm of derp. It's got the same armor layout as the SU-85, most basically, in that you have 45mm of frontal armor, you have a little bit of a lower silhouette, and you have a little higher speed as a result. So that one's more of a traditional, or at least it has the capability of being a more traditional tank destroyer. As I see, my time on this replay is running out. Quick interesting fact. The SU-122, 20 of those were captured and converted. Or basically, actually I rephrased that. A couple German Panzer IIIs were captured and used with the SU-122. Anyway, this is some derp right here. Some good stuff. I'm Baron, I'm signing out.
I did not see that rock in front of my tank because the tank is so big.
I'll say right there, Baron. That's a good spot, sir. We got, looks like a Panzer. Oh,
hello, IS-1 directly to our right.
Looking at him. Fire one. Oh no! I didn't know that there was an opening right there. Nice, Baron.